any minute. Okay, it's live. Hello, everyone. My name is Sheila Donoghue, and I'm a founder of Vero. We go around the world. Oh, hold on a minute. Let me let everyone in first.
Yay!
There were a couple of people waiting on the Zoom. Kathleen, hi, Kathleen. Nice to meet you. Feel free, for those of you on the Zoom, feel free to show your video. We want this to be interactive, but just to start the intro, my name is Sheila Donoghue, founder of Vero, and we go around the world seeking small producers that are farming their own land, making products with in a sustainable way, with passion, and we enjoy learning, and also we enjoy tasting. So today's event is about learning and tasting, and it is, as we know, the holiday season, and the theme of tonight is Prosecco. So we have two producers from the heart of Prosecco, which is called Valdobbiadene, and they're also brothers, Fabio and Carlo Sanzovo.
Hi. Hello.
And we have a certified wine educator who actually met at a Vineyard international class. I'm really happy that she's collaborating with us on the event. Her name is Mary Beth Vera, and her company is Crush Course.
Hello, so good to be here.
So, so we want to make this interactive, as I said before, so feel free to show your video. If you have a question, you feel free to enter it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the questions, but also just unmute yourself, and you know, that's fine as well. And what's also kind of cool is that we're probably all on different time zones, but in Italy, it's the aperitivo time, which is when traditionally we have a glass of Prosecco. And Mary Beth is in California, so it's around the brunch time where you also have a glass of Prosecco. and if you're on, let's say, East Coast time, it's or in the Midwest, let's say, it's could be your lunch time, so you can also have Prosecco at lunch. So so without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mary Beth.
Thank you. Perfect. Well, welcome everybody. You know, there can be just nothing more exciting and fun than being able to talk to you and sip Prosecco. I used to live in Italy myself, and this was the wine of aperitivo hour especially, but it was the wine of any time. And I didn't even live in Prosecco land, but I lived in northern Italy, and this is really part of the culture. And when I moved home, I remember missing Prosecco. And it really didn't take that long. It didn't take that many years, and it started to become a thing in the United States, and it became popular. So it was very exciting to be able to have Prosecco, but then be able to introduce people to this higher level of more distinguished Prosecco, the Prosecco that comes from the heartland of quality winemaking, the original historic land where the Sanzovo brothers, Col del Balt, are making their wine and growing their grapes in the beautiful hills of Valdobbiadene. And we're going to see what that looks like. So if, Sheila, do you have a second to just for a little introduction? Well, actually, before we do that, are we good with, we're going to be tasting today the Sanzovo Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG Brut. There, Sheila's showing it. And then we're going to taste the Col del Balt. Okay, so it's a fanciful name, Col del Balt, and it's a frizzante. So it's a lightly sparkling wine, and it's fermentation, natural fermentation in the bottle. There's lees in the bottle, so this is a very special wine. So we're going to talk about each of those more in depth a little bit later, but you know what? This is brunch time. This is aperitivo time. I think everybody should have a little pour and a toast. So you can sip along while we talk about the region. We get to know about the brothers a little bit more, and then we will get into more serious tasting. Now, I cheated and I popped mine open already. I'm going to do, you could really open whichever one you want now, but we are going to taste this one first and talk about it later. So I'm going to pour that one first.
Hey ragazzi, anche voi.
Hopefully a couple of sips will just make everything flow a little bit better. Go, Sheila. There, that's the noise I needed for mine. I opened it like 5 minutes before I got on. All right, so as we're pouring, I want you to take a look at these images that we're showing you. This is beautiful country. It is in northeastern Italy. I'm going to show you on a map in a little bit where we are, but I want you to take a look at the land. This is green rolling hills that are covered with grasses and covered with grapevines. There's rolling hills, but it's right at the base of the Dolomites. So we're getting really steep hills. So you can take a look at the beauty here. Wines have been growing here for grapes have been growing here and wine have been made here for hundreds of years. But we're going to talk a little bit more about how things got more established around 1876 is when Prosecco became to be known in Italy as a wine that people would seek out for bubbles from this region and then internationally. So take a look at that. This is the land, Valdobbiadene, the land of Prosecco.
Valdobbiadene. Valdobbiadene.
Valdobbiadene.
Okay, so let's practice that. Okay, so we do it right now. We're going to the land. Well, I'll do it when we see Valdobbiadene on the map. We're almost there. So here we are in the world. We're in Italy, and we're going to northeast Italy. And you see across the top there, that is those are the Alps going across the top, very, very high Alps. And we are tucked right up under the Alps. So we're in the province of Veneto. I think the next map might show us.
Yeah.
If you look, you see that lagoon in the bottom right? That is Venezia, or you might know it better as Venice. We are in the area 50 kilometers north of Venice. And you see we've got a circle there. This whole area that's the heartland of Prosecco is called Conegliano Valdobbiadene. And what it is, you don't see Valdobbiadene on the map yet. We're going to show it to you. But it's in the province of Treviso. So the region is Veneto. The province is Treviso. And then you have Conegliano to the east. And on the west corner is Valdobbiadene. So this is kind of a picture, a map of where
I think someone needs to unmute because unless you'd like to say something, but if you're not going to talk, I'd suggest muting yourself. Thank you.
So if you look at everything that's sort of in the light yellows and beiges on the map on the right, we're in the Veneto region. Prosecco in general, a very common Prosecco, can be grown in all of these regions. But if you zone in on the light kind of pale green where it says Treviso, this is where we're already getting into hillier country, a little bit higher altitude, and we're getting into better quality Prosecco. When you get to that dark region, that is the heartland, the classic zone, and the DOCG, highest quality grapes, Valdobbiadene and Conegliano. And we're going to be concentrating on Valdobbiadene. So I think we can go to one more slide, and then we'll practice how to say this. Okay, so this is the wine making zone, and over there on the left or on the west side is Valdobbiadene. So we're going to practice saying this. Okay, so what I like to do when I have people practice long words in a foreign language is start at the end. Okay, so I'm going to have you repeat after me, and everybody that's on Facebook Live, you can do it yourself as well. So at the end, it's so we're going to say Valdobbiadene. It's ene. Everybody say ene.
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 Perfect.
Ene.
And then you go adene. Adene.
Ardene.
Ardene.
Good. Adene.
Ardene.
Okay. Biadene.
Biadene.
Good. Biadene.
Biadene.
And then we just add Valdo to the beginning. So say Valdo.
Valdo.
Now say it together. Valdobbiadene.
Valdobbiadene.
There it is. You got it. That's how we pronounce it. And what you'll notice, I think we've got another slide that might show the mountains. The next slide, do we have a slide that kind of shows the one more? And we'll come back to this in a sec.
Okay.
There we go. Do you see that that's Ridge Sanzovo Graziano, where that red dot is? That's where our friends Carlo and Fabio live. They're growing their grapes. That's where their vineyards are. And right up above, you see that we're right next to very high elevation. This is where we are. And now you can go back one, and I want to show that picture that I just had you skip past. Sorry. Take a look at this. This is, there's some very, very steep grades in the Valdobbiadene region. Some are 20% grade, and what I mean by grade is slope. Some are 40%, some are 70% grade. And when you are farming on this type of, these types of hills, you have to make terraces so that all the land doesn't, fall off and wash off in winter rains. And because of the difficulty, everything has to be hand-picked. You can't put a tractor on hills like this. Tractors are for flat land. So everything is done by hand, many, many passes in the vineyard. Places in the world where are on steep slopes or other very, very difficult places to farm, high altitude, it's called heroic viticulture. That means it's very difficult, very challenging. Many hours go into farming. In fact, I've read statistics, not statistics, it's data that comes out of this Prosecco region in Valdobbiadene, is that it can be anywhere from 600 to 800 hours per hectare, man hours, person hours, cultivating and working with the vines by hand, compared to on the flat land that can use tractors that are about 100 to 150 to 200 hours. That's a big difference. One other thing I want to introduce here, because we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask the brothers about it as well, is taking a look at the beauty here and about the culture of growing grapes on these hills, quality grapes and quality wine that have been occurring for a few hundred years. The Valdobbiadene, the people of Valdobbiadene and the growers applied for UNESCO World Heritage Site protection of the land back in, I think they applied in 2003, and it was just awarded in 2019. So now UNESCO is preserving the way of life, the beauty of this land, and the ability to continue into the future farming on these beautiful hills at the base of the Dolomites, just 50 kilometers north of beautiful Venice. Yeah. Was there one more picture of a map before we start
No. Yeah.
talking to? That's it. Okay. So there they are. So why don't we begin by talking with Carlo and Fabio? And maybe I'll start with, we have Carlo and Fabio. They both speak Italian, obviously, because they are Italians from Northern Italy. And Carlo is able to speak both languages, and Fabio speaks only Italian. So we'll do a little bit of translating when we ask him a question. So if you don't mind, I'm going to start with Fabio. Fabio, can you tell us, the two of you have been making and growing grapes on your family's property for 3 generations. You're the 3rd generation. How old were you when you started either in the winery or in the vineyard? And which one do you prefer? And I can ask that question in Italian very quickly. Fabio, a quale età era tu quando hai iniziato a lavorare nella business della famiglia del vino? E hai cominciato nei vigne o nelle cantine e quale preferisci?
Io ho iniziato a 5 anni, quando ero
5.
piccolino ancora. Sì, uscivo con mio papà col trattore sulla vigna a iniziare in cantina un po' meno. Eravamo più spostati sul vigneto e dopo ci siamo un po' più valorizzati anche sulla cantina con gli anni.
Va bene.
E dopo, man mano con gli anni, abbiamo iniziato sì, a lavorare sempre di più e sempre la passione sempre più grande. Dopo, continuando anche con la scuola di agraria e enologia, ho sempre continuato sul settore, fino ad arrivare a un paio di anni fa che abbiamo aperto, sì, che abbiamo continuato noi con l'attività di famiglia.
Ok, bene.
Vigneto, cantina.
Un attimo, voglio tradurre prima quando posso ricordare. Okay, so that I can remember, I put a little pause in there. At 5 years old, he started with his father, a little bit in the winery, but mostly he was outside, and that was what he preferred. He was a little bit more among the vines, and he kind of continued on that path until he went to the viticulture school. And I'm going to ask him if it was in Conegliano. I'm kind of guessing. È stato in Conegliano, la scuola lì dove le ha studiato?
Enologia, sì, a scuola enologica.
Okay. Okay, so yes, so there's when I said it's Valdobbiadene and Conegliano, the two cities. Conegliano, the first winemaking school in all of Italy was established in Conegliano, right up here in Prosecco country, in 1876. And it's still going today. And well, we're going to find out if Carlo went there too. Fabio did. And I find winemakers from all over Italy. They say that that's where they went to school. So I think that's pretty fabulous. Continua, Fabio. Stavo per dire qualcos'altro.
Allora, come vigneto cantina, io alla fine sono più sul vigneto rispetto alla cantina. Dopo, quando abbiamo bisogno, ci diamo una mano, sì, in cantina e vigneto, però io sono più che altro nei vigneti all'esterno.
Okay, so he prefers to be outside. A little bit, I think he said it's a little bit lonely, or you're kind of by yourself on the inside. He likes to be outside, but he does lend a hand on in the cantina, which means the winery, whenever it's needed. And I think that Carlo has told me that also in the past that, you know, when it's needed, they will switch roles because they know what's going on in both areas, but maybe they've had to specialize. Carlo, when did you begin working in the family business? And did you stay more in the cantina, or did you fight over who's going to be outside in the vines? And what do you prefer?
I start in my winery at 23 years old, but before I work in other winery to start learning something more. And yes, I prefer working in the vineyard than in the winery than in the vineyard, because we decided to split the job, and Fabio works more in the vineyard and I work more in the winery. So, but we both know all the jobs that we have to do, even the vineyard. So
fabulous.
I think that we have to split sometimes, you know, because we have to focus on one thing that is easier to remember everything.
Yeah.
So
specializing. So you have the generalist background, but obviously specializing tasks so that you can focus. When you worked with other wineries, was it always around the Prosecco region, or did you ever branch out and work in another region before you were 23?
No, I worked in Valdobbiadene, in a winery here, to know more about making wine and something like that.
Okay, so I'm going to, before we talk about, I think it's going to be important to talk about what makes the land so special for making glera and making quality wine. But one of the first things I want to ask you is, you live in this beautiful country, in a place where people would love to go visit or have visited from outside of the region and outside of Italy because it's so gorgeous and there's a way of life around bubbly wine. What was it like? Can you tell us something about what it's like, either from in terms of the land, of the food, of the lifestyle, of nature, of living in this region, something that we might not know, just about the region?
You might know that Valdobbiadene is famous for Prosecco wine, but that is the heart of our community. So almost everything is around Prosecco here, but Valdobbiadene is also beautiful because it's a quiet place to live, not so much stress, and we are surrounded by beautiful hill and wooden and something like that. So it's a good place to live.
So you've got the hills to go for a walk, you've got the forest right on the border, and everything is centered around bubbly wine. I love it. All right, so let's talk about, because we want to get to the wines soon, but what I want to ask you is, I'm going to first ask you a little bit about the glera grape, and then I want to get into, I'm going to talk about the land first. What makes the land here in Valdobbiadene different from maybe the broader region in Friuli and in the rest of Veneto, the more flat land where you could, where Prosecco is made, especially Prosecco in the DOC level? What differentiates, why is this area, has it achieved a higher level status of quality, DOCG? There must be something in the weather and in the land that makes the grapes at higher quality.
You know, Valdobbiadene is a perfect place for growing glera grapes because glera found in this hill the best balance about altitude, soil, sunlight, and low humidity. That is good for grow wine.
And when I've been in the area a few times for a day or two, tasting and passing through, and different times, you know, it's been, you know, in the spring, it's been misty. You can see that there's a lot of, we're up in the north, it's very green up there. So I imagine that there gets to be some rainfall and some fog and humidity and mist. And grapevines don't always like that mist. There must be some sunshine in there too. So can you explain, is there something happening here that keeps the vines also dry and also ripening while everything can be so green?
You know, when you work in the slope, there is more wind than in the plain. So that's why we have less problem with the humidity, because usually the wind dry out faster than in the plain area.
Great. So now there's a couple of great things here. If you follow wine, you know, you're interested in wine, you start to learn that some of the best quality grape growing in the world happens in two types of, in two ways. Coming from areas that are on a slope rather than the flatland is usually going to indicate that there's an ability for quality, and cooling influences. So either it's a cool area that maybe is in the north, or in California, it's near a coast or near a body of water. So what you have here is, with that slope, you have the wind. That's great. That's drying everything out. And I'm assuming that those slopes are also helping to keep the grapes struggling a little bit, so that they're concentrating their energy on ripening the fruit rather than making more plant, or reducing yield a little bit.
I say also you know, when the vine give more energy to the grapes, then usually in the slope that's it. I mean, when usually in the plain there is more leaves, because there is too much element that go to the leaves, not to the grapes. But in the hill is positive. I mean, when usually there is a leaf and the more grapes, energy for the grape. That's why we have a better quality than the plain area.
So we got a natural, so when you're in the plains, you've got more fertile soil. So that might have been one of the words that you were looking for. Fertile soil, and that fertility and all of that water that stays down in the flat lands just makes the vine concentrate its energy on two things: too many leaves and not putting enough energy in ripening the grapes, or sometimes it will just make too many grapes and then it struggles to ripen them all. So slopes are a perfect way that it naturally, nature moderates the vine's ability to make too many leaves and make too many tendrils, and it concentrates on ripening the seeds and the berry. So fantastic. So this, the world of wine also agrees that this region around Valdobbiadene is for high production, high quality wine.
Mary Beth, there's a question, and if I'm not mistaken, well, it's from Kathleen Tyree. If I'm not mistaken, she has a winery in Southern California. And Kathleen, feel free to unmute yourself. So she's asking about powdery mildew, which is a problem that wineries face, at least in Southern California. And you're in Northern California, so you could probably comment on that as well. But how do they get, the powdery mildew? And if so, how do they treat it?
Well, I might ask that of our winemakers and growers. Carlo, do you know the translation of powdery mildew?
No.
Mildew is muffa and powder is polvere. Quindi una specie di muffa di polvere.
È bianco che viene quando i vini sono umidi. C'è un problema lì per controllare? Is there a way to control it or need to control that?
No, yeah, we need, it's we have less problem, but there is that problem even here, but it's a small part, so it's not too risky for us. So, I mean, usually there is a small percent of the grape that get this powder. So yeah, it's not a big problem for us, but it's still here.
And one of the things that I will mention, I think is great, you announced this year and earlier this year, and I believe some of your neighbors in Valdobbiadene and Conegliano are doing the same thing. You're now certified with a type of sustainability that any controls that you are doing in the vineyard, whether it's fertilizers or anything that might be helping with the control something like powdery mildew, that you're using the least restrictive method, and you're certified that you are following those practices. That's correct, right? You've now got it on the label of your bottle.
Yeah, so we started 2 years ago with this certification, and it's important to us also because it's our way to preserve this area for the damage of intensive culture. But it's we used to less chemical, and there is sometimes some problem with some like muffa, but yeah,
With the mildew.
we found the even other method to preserve from this illness of the vine. And so we have we don't need to use too much chemical. That's why we decided to go in this certification.
Excellent. So congratulations.
And just to clarify, because the question that Kathleen had also was, because you mentioned, Carlo, that there is some mildew. So what specifically do you use to treat it?
I have my brother. But the first thing that we used to remove all the leaves around the grapes, so there is more windy through the grapes, and that is preserved from that. And
while you are looking that up, I'm also wondering, at some point, I would like everybody to see, if it's not too difficult, I don't know what computer you're using. Are you using an iPad or something that you can show people what is going on behind you? Because behind you is your cantina.
yes, I'll show you.
Look at that, beautiful. And my understanding is this is a new cantina, a new winery that's been, it's either been rebuilt or it's built from scratch in the last 3 or 4 years.
I built from nothing because there was a vineyard here. So we removed the vineyard and built this new winery because we need more space. So
excellent. Okay, so that's where they're working. And remember that Prosecco is made differently than champagne. Champagne is a much longer process and a very long process of creating the fermentation in each individual bottle, and then waiting a year and a half at least, and maybe longer, and then disgorging the dead yeast. And then refilling each individual bottle with sugar and a sugar and wine mixture. So it has its own style, and it's very expensive to make. But back in 1876, Antonio Carpene at the Conegliano Wine School really perfected the Prosecco method, which is the method in the tanks. So all those tanks you see, the wine is made in pressurized tanks. When the yeast is put inside those tanks, the tanks are sealed, and that creates, when the carbon dioxide is released as the byproduct of fermentation, that carbon dioxide stays trapped in that vessel, and then it gets trapped and dissolved and absorbed into the liquid. And therefore, we have a much fresher, crisper product that tastes more like the original glera grape. So when you choose to go with champagne, you are choosing to want to get those rounder flavors that are more about what the yeast tastes like and what the yeast has done over years to the wine. And when you choose a Prosecco, you're choosing something that's fresh and alive and crisp and has fruit and floral notes that come from the glera grape. So I'm doing that. What you were doing the other day, Carlo, is when you're, am I speaking Italian or am I speaking English? So I think what I'd like to do is I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing in the winery, but I'd like to do it as we pour the Valdobbiadene Brut. Right now, you'll see on the label, I've got to dry this off. I've got mine in an ice thing here. I don't have my, I'm going to be dripping wine everywhere. Okay. So when you get a wine that's from the DOCG, it can say the full long name that could be, if the grapes were grown in the whole, across the heart of the region between Conegliano and Valdobbiadene, the full name would be Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG. But if your grapes come from just one region or the other, you can drop either the Conegliano or Valdobbiadene. So their grapes, I believe that you farm around 6 different, is it 6 different plots or 6 different hectares of glera grape? That's the grape that goes in Prosecco. And yours are from the Valdobbiadene. So this one is Valdobbiadene. And then it's DOCG, and on the back, it has the name Prosecco, Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore. And this is made in the Brut sweetness level. So interesting, by tradition, Prosecco is always in the extra dry style, a little bit sweeter. So the extra dry was 12 to 17 grams of sugar, but the brut is between 0 and 12. So we'll ask them how many grams of sugar you have in here. The whole world just started to enjoy drier and drier wines. So the region, the consortio of Prosecco DOCG, started to allow drier and drier versions. And so this is Carlo and Fabio's drier version, and this is the one that Vero Vino is importing for you. So we want to pour a little bit. What are you cutting into over there? You got pizza?
I have to, it's just aperitivo time. So
okay. I love that you're doing it right. Okay, so I'm going to pour a little bit more. And let's taste together. And I want you to tell me, our guests, either in the chat or open up your, what's it called, your microphone, and tell us what you're getting out of it. And then afterwards, we'll ask the winemakers, the brothers, what they're trying to achieve and what they like about this wine.
I have to pour some more.
You've been drinking over there. This is so good. I'm going to hold back just a second from saying anything.
I'm just going to do a little commercial for short commercial for these really fantastic stoppers that we just got in. We imported them from Italy, and they're patented. The wine will, the bubbles will stay for at least 3 days. So I put it on earlier, and I have to hold on to it so it doesn't go flying. Actually, it didn't make a big noise this time, but that's okay. But it's a great little stopper, and it comes free with all of our sparkling wine sets. That includes we have a set for the Sanzovo brothers. We have these 2 wines.
I've got it too. It's great, super handy. All right, so anybody out there on the either Sheila, if you can check on the Facebook chat, if anybody's got comments there, or on this chat here, or just turn on, you know, Kim or Kathleen or anyone. What are you getting from this wine?
Well, I'll start. So the bubbles are really fine bubbles, very like happy bubbles, nice for celebrating. And it's the aromas I'm getting are kind of like in line with what you were saying before, Mary Beth. Like it's just it's delicate, you know, flowers, some fruit. I guess it's peach, maybe. And a little bit of citrus. I know in the past I've smelled a little bit of lime and would taste the lime as well, actually, in both of their wines. And just the, you know, to drink it is really, if you like drier Proseccos, it's really lovely. It has a fantastic acidity, and that's, I think, what a lot of Proseccos miss. And it's just a very like straightforward Prosecco. I don't want to say simple because it's not. It has complexity, but it's you know, it's what a Prosecco should be.
This is wonderful. There has, I mean, you say acidity, but it doesn't lead with acidity. It's perfect balance. So it's very thirst quenching, very mouth watering. I'm trying to take small sips because I'm going to, when we're done, you know, this, I mean, I could really drink this as a thirst quencher, but it's got those really fine bubbles. As you said, it's made in the spumante style. So it is fully sparkling, but I'm getting like, I get some lemon. I definitely get like a perfume of white flowers first, a little bit of lemon. And there, because I've been having mandarin oranges lately, I'm getting a little bit of a mandarin orange peel in there. but it's got that perfect level of juiciness and acidity and this light feel on the palate with that perfect amount of bubbles and spritz. It's soft, but it has structure to it as well. And oh, yeah, it's very, very, very nice. I love this as a brut wine. So, gentlemen, if you could tell us, what are you trying to achieve with your Proseccos in general? Is there a style that you want to achieve with all of your Proseccos? And what are you trying to achieve with this brut? And anything you want to say specifically about, if you were tasting this with us and with other people, what do you say that they will notice about this wine?
For us, our goal is to get the best balance for every kind of our wine, because sometimes you have to check some details to create a good balance between acidity and flowers and everything, because I think this is the most important thing. To get a good wine, you need balance for us. So that's why in each kind of our spumantes, we prefer to get this condition. And like you said, you're right. You can taste the citrus, the lemon, even the white flower. This is usually the taste of a proper Prosecco.
It's the glera grape. That's the grape can bring citrus. It can bring white peach, but there's always this lovely floral. And when you're making a Prosecco in the traditional method in the tank under those very cool conditions, refrigerated, that's what it's trying to do, is preserve the fruit to the best of its ability. Is there something else that you want to add to this? I think you've perfectly achieved the balance, and the finish is just lovely. It makes me want more. It doesn't end bitter. It's got fruit, and it's got the floral, and it's got a really nice mouthfeel. I'm going to get some more of this. And I already snuck some of the next wine too beforehand, and I loved it. I love it. So that's a kind of a little preview here. Tell us about, and then we're going to move to the next wine in a moment. But okay, so this winery, the Sanzovo winery on your property there in, Bigolino. So your little village is a little bit south of Valdobbiadene, but not very far. And it's along the river.
2 kilometers far in the south of Valdobbiadene.
Oh, only 2
So
kilometers.
close.
Very close.
Yeah.
Okay, you're practically Valdobbiadene. You are.
Usually we say we are from Valdobbiadene because it's a little village, so we try to.
Perfect. Well, tell us, your grandfather started the winery, your father took over, and then you took over. I know that at 23, Carlo, you mentioned, what were some innovations? So if your grandfather started in about 1950, your father probably, when he started was it the 90s that he started it? What were some innovations, technical innovations, either in the vineyard or in the winery that he would have adapted? And then what innovations are you applying now from your...
Every generation, like when my grandfather started, he had some really old tools to work. I mean, like in the vineyard, he has one tractor and not much tools to work. And when my father started, like 40 years later, he had something more, more machines to work in the vineyard. And also in the winery, my grandfather had a wooden tanks, and then my father started to buy in the tanks in the concentrate in cemento.
Oh, cement tanks. Okay.
And we decide to, when we start the new winery, we decide to go to the steel tanks because they are a higher level of innovation. So when we start this new winery, we decide to go to the highest level of technology for preserve the wine and work better. But it's also everything about the time. When my grandfather and my father took a job, they got the best invention of the time. So now we have upgraded everything.
So when you switch to tanks, I mean, just if you're not thinking about this or following it all the time, cement tanks are fantastic, but they're only as cool as the ambient temperature. I don't know if the cement tanks were above ground or below ground. That would have already been much cooler fermentation than his grandfather using the wood tanks, and the cement is much more neutral. But cement, now that you're at the stainless steel, they would be temperature controlled, right?
Yeah, it's different from now, but they already had at that time the control system, so every tank is controlled by a computer. But now we have a more technology to work in the winery.
And you said, I believe that you said that you're using handheld, so that you can, on your cell phone, you have an app that tells you what's happening in the tank. So you can be someplace else. Fabio can be in the vineyard, and if he wanted to, he could check what was going on with the tanks if you were asleep at the wheel.
Like I say, we try to get the best innovation for work easy. I mean, sometimes if you are like you say, like we are around, if I be in America and I have some problem here, I got an email on my phone, so someone can check in the winery what happened. And like my father, he didn't have this opportunity, and because it does exist at that time.
Right. It gives you some flexibility to be able to step away, to go sell your wine or to go get supplies or to come to the United States and have some Prosecco with us while you're still keeping an eye. I love it.
Also because, we are only two work here. So now, like in this time here, we have to do the pruning. So usually we go out in the vineyard all the day. So if I have some problem, I have to check here. But if I'm not here, I don't know until I come back in the winery, and this is a good opportunity to preserve some damage that it can be when you live. I don't know, maybe the temperature is go too higher, so maybe you got some problem. So now we can check better the situation with this system.
This is wonderful. Okay, so I am thinking that maybe it's time we've tasted the Brut, that we move to the Col del Balt, which is another wine that Sheila and Vero Vino are importing for you. It's very different. It is, Sheila just posted a new blog article, What's Old is New Again. So we can talk, and everybody kind of knows what Prosecco is, what it has been since 1876, 1900, creating the bubbles in the tank. But this is a perfected method of the way wines used to be made for centuries in the Prosecco area. So the Col del Balt is kind of going back to the way the wine used to be made in your region. So Sheila, do you want to tell us about it, or I can introduce it, or Carlo?
You talking about? Yeah, you.
Okay.
Maybe you and Carlo.
Okay,
yeah.
I will introduce the idea, and then Carlo and Fabio will tell us some more. This is frizzante fermentazione spontanea. So spontaneous fermentation in the bottle, or Sometimes it's called re-fermented naturally in the bottle. It's also referred to as the ancestral method or col fondo. And I think col fondo is the word that really helps us understand. This wine is made, col is with the, fondo is bottoms. But what that really means is when the wine when the Prosecco is made in tank before it's completely finished fermentation. So there's still yeast in the tank that's living, and there's still sugar that wants to be consumed. The wine is actually bottled. And some of that, there's a little bit of sugar left in the juice. There's some yeast that ends up in the bottle, and that yeast in the bottle is then sealed over the top, and it finishes a little bit of fermentation in the bottle. And with that pressure, that makes a fizz, not a spumante, not the full pressure, but 2.5 atmospheres of pressure in the frizzante or semi-sparkling style. So this is bottled with the lees, and it's kind of sounds like it might be a little bit like champagne, but it's not. It's because the lees is left in the bottle. So when you buy it, there's a little bit of lees on the bottom. So you might see a little bit of cloudiness from the sediment, but it makes the wine more interesting. And this is the way the ancestors, not even that long ago in Prosecco, were making wine. So I'm going to pour some. And can you tell us a little bit more, Carlo or Fabio, about your inspiration to make this wine, how long it's been made in the region, and what you like to get from this wine, what you're trying to achieve?
This Codolà is the oldest wine that we used to produce in this area. It started with my grandfather because, like I say, in that time, there weren't the innovation system to make bubbles. So it was the only way. And, for us, it's like a tradition for us. So we decided to keep this tradition in that time. And now we used to do this kind of wine to remember even our grandfather that was the first to start this activity, this winery. So that's why we have the new kind of spumante, but we also wanted to keep this one to legacy of my grandfather.
I love that you're keeping the legacy of your grandfather. Take a look at it. When we actually look at this wine, let me see if I can, do I have anything that's just plain white here? Got a lot of writing. There's still a little bit of cloudiness. I mean, you leave that bottle standing up and you're not going to get any of the lees in your glass. It's not going to come until the very, very end. But there's a little bit of turbidity in here, we call it. And it's very dry. So correct me if I'm wrong, Carlo and Fabio, but these wines that are made in the ancestral method, this old method of naturally creating bubbles in the bottle in the first fermentation, is the because it ferments dry in the bottle and it's never opened and no sugar is added. So if we go back to Prosecco, once fermentation is complete, similar to what's happened in Champagne and other sparkling regions in the world, the producer decides how sweet they want to make it. And in the very end, add a dosage of sugar to sweeten it up. This is different. However it ferments dry, when it ferments completely dry, if it does in the bottle, you're going to get a very dry wine. So this is much drier than the Brut.
Yeah, exactly. Because we can control the fermentation in this kind of wine. In the tank, you can choose what level of sugar you want to keep, but not in this one because it's natural fermentation. So they eat the sugar until the sugar is finished.
And I see a question came in, Brut versus Col del Balt versus other Proseccos. Is the dryness a function of when the grape is picked, the level of bricks, so what we use here, or is it the length of time in the tanks that determines the sweetness, or is it just how it's fermented in the bottle? How is along the Proseccos, maybe we talk about Proseccos in general, we can just go back a little bit, taking the Col del Balt out of the picture for 1 minute, just remind us, how is sweetness created in Proseccos in general, and then how this style differs? How does the sweetness made?
The sweetness made is in the second fermentation. There is in the spumante, there is we add sugar, but not in this kind. This kind is the residual sugar from the first fermentation, and the first fermentation is not finished, so we have a residual sugar, and then when we put in the bottle, we get this second fermentation. But in the spumante, like brut extra dry, the sweetness is when you stop the second fermentation in the tank. I mean, if I need, I wanna make extra dry, I'm gonna stop earlier the fermentation. So there is the sugar inside the tank. There is more.
So it's natural residual sugar.
Yeah, this is for the Charmat method when you create brut extra dry, not Col del Balt. Col del Balt has a different method.
Okay, this was a question, it's kind of related because I was going to ask this of Fabio before. So, and either one of you, so the winemaker often makes the decisions of when the grapes are going to get picked, but the vineyard manager also knows. So I'm going to ask Fabio, but then either one of you can answer. Fabio, a quel misura di zucchero fai la raccoltazione per la glera di solito e un numero, quale a livello di dolcezza quando è raccolta, o dipende quale vino state pensando di produrre? And my question is basically, at what level of sweetness do you normally pick your grapes in Prosecco? Are you picking it sweeter or drier? What's your goal?
Ok, allora la raccolta viene fatta in base principalmente alla tipologia di vino che dobbiamo fare, se è un spumante, brut, extra dry o fondo, e dopo abbiamo un limite minimo di raccolta che di solito vai sui 9,5 di alcol naturali, che corrisponde circa sui 16, 18,
16% di zuccheri,
che comunque è un minimo da disciplinare. Però dopo, in base anche all'acidità che abbiamo, decidiamo per fare gli spumanti o per fare il vino col fondo. È una raccolta sì, controllata sulla maturazione con le varie analisi, fino a che decidiamo il giorno dove iniziamo la vendemmia.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, about 16 to 18% sugar is when you pick, but it also, you're making your decisions based on whether that the grapes are going to go into a brut or an extra dry. And by the way, just to remember, extra dry is sweeter than a brut, or whether you're making it for the col fondo. And of course, it's picked like most places of quality wine in the world. It's based on the ripeness of the grapes, not just the level of sweetness, although it's important, and the level of acidity, because the level of acidity is very important. You need to have a high level of acidity in sparkling wine. Carlo, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, yeah, you say everything. I mean, you know, like I said before, we have to find the good balance about sweetness, acidity, and all the elements they are in the good balance, because sometimes maybe you can get a good sweetness, but it's too high, so we have to wait, because we need the best element to get the best wine. I mean, but you know, like in the small winery like us, every year is different. So we have to check every year in the proper way. We can just check like in the paper, you know. Usually the harvest is around the middle of September, but this year we start almost in the end because the ripeness is also good in the middle. So every year we have to check differently that maybe the last year.
Yeah, I read you had a cold winter in 21. That everything started out slow, so you had to wait longer.
Yeah, we start like in the end of September this year, and last year we start around the middle of September. Sometimes we start in the beginning of September. Depends every year how the season works.
Well, I have a fun question for you as we're enjoying the Col del Balt. And by the way, I know that I've got two questions because we're running out of time here and I want us all to enjoy it. Could you tell us, I believe you said that normally in your cantina, you will serve the Col del Balt first, correct?
Yes.
And that is because generally in wine, we drink from driest to sweetest. Because if you start with the sweet wine, the next wine will end up, because you get habituated to sweetness, the second wine will seem too bitter because like cancels like. So we always go from the driest to the sweetest. So we went opposite because we wanted to start with the most traditional, but you would normally start if you're drinking them side by side with the Col del Balt first. And I could see this Col del Balt with, because it's a little bit drier, with, anything from raw fish to, potato chips. There's lots of things that it would go with. But I want to ask you, and this is for both of you, do people drink? Okay, this is the land of bubbly. Do you drink? You two, but also your neighbors, your friends, the Valdobbiadene, the people who live there. Do you drink bubbly wine all the time? Do you drink it with all the meals? Is it common, or do you just make it and other people drink it? And Fabio, my question, bevete voi, tutti voi in Valdobbiadene, in questa zona, è la zona, la terra di spumante, frizzante, per cena, per pranzo, bevete cosa? Quasi quasi sempre gli spumanti, i frizzanti, i vostri vini o qualcos'altro?
Dipende alla fine, se mangiamo più carne vai sul rosso, o rossi della nostra regione o anche qualche rosso italiano, mentre per i primi o secondi, sì, o pesce o carne bianca vai di solito sempre prosecco alla fine, o col fondo o brut.
Well, how fun is that? So he said, sounds very fun to me. If it's a big piece of meat, they'll have a red wine from their neighbors somewhere. But for everything else, antipasti, first courses, fish, anything with a cream sauce, they are drinking one of their range of bubblies. Carlo, do you agree with that?
Yes, we often drink Prosecco. And specifically col fondo, because it's easier to drink when you get something to eat like white meat or salami or cheese. And but we also drink other wines. I mean, so depends which is the situation. But usually we drink Prosecco because it's easier to drink, and we are surrounded by Prosecco.
And good Prosecco. Yeah, there's the col fondo is drier and there's more structure to it. So with that added structure, it'd be like anything that you would have with a, in some ways, a bigger, slightly fuller bodied wine. And with the dryness, it cleanses your palate of all of those cheeses and creamy dishes and salamis. So
I'm having this focaccia. It's made by my husband, and it's made from 70% cream, and then the rest cheese. So it's obviously very fatty, but it's perfect with the crispness of the Prosecco.
Nice.
Good, yeah.
Well, tell us, Sheila, what is your normal closing time? We're at an hour.
Well, we normally finish around now. I don't know. We have a nice compliment from Kathleen. She's really enjoying it. She's so glad, Kathleen, you're able to participate, as well as Kim. She also complimented us. So I suppose we can, close. We didn't get to talk, Mary Beth, about some of the new wines that they're making, but that is something we can stay tuned to. So,
Want to give a hint? A hint?
So, Carlo and Fabio's wines were actually never in the U.S., and we just imported them like 2 months ago. So this is, these are, let's say the wines are really just, entering into the U.S. People are just starting to get to know them. So that's one reason why we wanted to put this like class and tasting together. And so stay tuned, because I certainly like to import also some of their new stuff, because we're all about exploring and learning and trying new things. So yeah, so I don't know, Mary Beth, if you had any closing words, anything else?
Well, I think what I'd like to say is kind of, I hope that you've enjoyed meeting the winemakers. I would like to welcome you and your wines to the United States. If we can't get to Valdobbiadene, which I'm hoping to get there again soon and be able to be in your tasting room, which will be opened soon, and get to see your land and those beautiful rolling hills. And I've been looking for lots of excuses to have every chance for bubbles with every kind of food there, to welcome you here. And I think it's great, Sheila, that the wines that you're importing, there's some really good price points. And, I just want to remind you that you can buy them separately, but you can just buy them as a set. She is selling the two of them together with this wonderful opener. And be able to understand, anytime that you have the opportunity to read articles about and get on talks like this with the winemakers, with the people that are growing the grapes on their land and making the wine, and getting to talk with them and taste their wines with them, take advantage of it, because you can get so much more out of it to get the story. And taking the story with you every time that you drink the wine just is part of the magic of what enjoying and following wine is all about.
So just as a reminder, these wines are available for purchase. We sell to wine stores and restaurants as well. And for consumers, you can purchase them also on our website, which is verovinogusto.com. And then also the recording will be available on our website as well. So
and I might
follow us, Vero Vino Gusto.
I might add, and you might want to put that slide up, but I might add that on your site, the verovinogusto.com, if you go to the blog, if you want to learn more about Prosecco, there's the last 3 blog articles. One is about Prosecco in general, and then it focuses on Valdobbiadene, so you get kind of a big picture. The next one is pairing wine with Prosecco. And then the one that just came out 2 days ago is about wines like Col del Balt, the ancestral method, Col Fondo. What does it mean and what are the differences? So you can learn more that way as well. And I will put in a little plug that we ran out of time, Carlo and Fabio, for you to tell us about your Vino Bianco Spumante 3.4. That one is going to be a sparkling spumante Prosecco with a little bit less pressure. And I believe that one is going to be with some lees in the bottle as well. And then you have one that I think maybe just stays in the stays in Italy, and it is in the the extra dry, which is the traditional slightly sweeter style. So when you go out there this year in the next few months, you can also try it and get to meet them personally.
Keep your halos on,
Yes.
Fabio and Carlo.
Did y'all notice that? You guys look like angels. Gli angeli di Valdobbiadene. Okay.
Bene. Allora, so happy holidays to everybody. All the best. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate.
Feste.
Enjoy.
Buone feste. Cin
Thank you.
cin. Cin
Thank you,
cin.
Maria. Fabio, Carlo. Ching ching.
Ciao.
Mhm.